Hello and welcome to our audience members joining us from across the globe. I'm Raymond Karam, the Chief Program and Development Officer here at the Arab Gulf States Institute. We continue our deep dive into Gulf cinema this year as we look today at the origins and outlook of Saudi Arabia's film industry as the kingdom emerges as a new center for Gulf and Arab film. We have a truly wonderful panel of practitioners and experts with us today. I'll introduce them very briefly here and share a link to their full bios in the chat. First, I'd like to welcome Fatima AlBanawi, renowned actor, producer, and director. She is the founder of Alfwed Production House and author of the book The Other Story. She is a Harvard graduate and has become internationally recognized as one of the shapers of the Saudi cinematic scene with her leading role in Baraka Meets Baraka, which premiered in 2016. Her real passion for intimate and original stories is evident in her screenplay Basma, her Netflix original directorial debut. Also, a warm welcome to Aymen Khoja, an award-winning Saudi film producer and director with a master's in film from the New York Film Academy. He has collaborated with international studios, including Embassy Studio, creating high-quality films and series. Through his company, Aymen Khoja Pictures, he brings Saudi talent to Hollywood to produce exceptional films, including the comedy feature film Il Signore, currently playing in Saudi cinemas. Another warm welcome to Dr. Abdulrahman Alghannam. He is an assistant professor of media studies at King Faisal University, specializing in media economics and transnational cinema studies, particularly within emerging markets. His research has been published in various platforms, and he actively engages with the community through initiatives aimed at enhancing culture in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region. I'm also pleased to introduce Dr. Musab Alamri, a film director and consultant specializing in film and cultural initiatives across both government and private sectors. He has led numerous high-profile projects and government initiatives within various cultural sectors, including film. He also serves as an assistant professor of film, sharing his expertise with the next generation of filmmakers. His latest book is titled Film Directing: Your Steps Toward Directing Film Based on the Latest Practices. And moderating the session today is my colleague Alia Yunis. She's a visiting scholar at AGSI. She is a filmmaker and scholar and has taught film and heritage studies at NYU Abu Dhabi and Zayed University in the UAE for 14 years. Her most recent feature documentary, The Golden Harvest, about the interconnected histories of the olive tree, continues to play in festivals and other venues. And currently with us, she is researching the date palm and developing it into the film Datelines. And with that, Alia, over to you.
Thanks, Raymond. And thank you to everyone that is here. I know it was a lot of effort to get the four of you here at the same time in the same place. And there's so much interest in Saudi cinema these days that I'm really glad we could make this happen. And it's great that you all come at the idea of film from different backgrounds also. So with that in mind, before we talk about the filmmaking, I thought we would talk about Saudi Arabia and the cinemas, because while the rest of the world has declining box offices and cinemas are closing, you have a booming box office, and you also are the biggest box office in the region now. So that has had to change the landscape of your daily lives, of the culture, of the feel of the cities. And so I thought, let's start first with that, like how is cinema itself and having the ability to go to the cinemas again since 2018 changed your lives and the lives of your communities. And I know that one of you has done this as an academic exercise, and one of you is one of the most recognizable faces in Saudi cinema, and that's of course Fatima. And one of you has a film playing right now in theaters. That's very funny. I just saw last night, which is Aymen. And then we have Musab, who also has done a lot of filmmaking and also a lot of study of cinema. But I am going to start with Abdulrahman because I know he's been researching this topic about how Saudi Arabia's landscape is changing by having cinemas. So I thought I'd start the question with you, and then we'll go to Fatima to talk about it as
Sure.
go.
Well, thank you, Alia. It's wonderful to be always here tonight, and thank you for the Institute for organizing such an event. And I think talking about Saudi film industry is where it began and where it's going. it's a great always to see so much interest in what's happening within the Saudi film and filmmaking and landscape. I think right now there's something really exciting in happening in Saudi Arabia. We're seeing more films, more cinema chains, more even filmmaking cultures, or more dreams from young filmmakers to produce and also to act and to be part of the filmmaking movement. It's like the creative energy is all developing at fast pace. So that's very much interesting. But as, also for us as a researcher and academic, it's also there's some challenges. There's some things that we always need to talk and sit and examine in somehow and in some ways. For example, when it comes to cinema development changes in Saudi Arabia, I've been doing so much research on how cinema chains, for example, developing in Riyadh and in major city like Riyadh and Jeddah and Dammam. And I've seen so much trends. Maybe these are some of them have published, some of them on the way, hopefully to be published soon. But there's so much energy, not just from the film production side, but also the film exhibition aspect. We've seen the culture of mall cinema transformed from Dubai and Qatar and Bahrain as well to Saudis, but also we've been introduced to new types of cinema goers. I myself I don't like to go to shop. I like shopping malls, but I like to go to open area. And I think there's so much new offers at stake in Saudi Arabia, especially with a brand like AMC that offer you the opportunity to go to see movies without visiting shopping malls. So that's big. And that's also mixing the culture of cinema goers in Saudi Arabia and also driving more people to go and also introducing people to see the brand while they're driving, rather than going inside and shopping and do the normal shopping inside the mall, then ended up at night at watching movies. But this is a culture, I think, that it's growing in Saudis, which is somehow different or some way different than what happened in neighbor countries. There's also new voices, absolutely. And we've seen that kind of competition between not only Hollywood, but we've been introduced to local competition and breaking record at box office. So much to talk about, not only the landscape of where cinema exists, and also how cinema actually represented by, but also the content itself and who made the content, who produced it. There's also lots of things to talk about. So.
Okay, thanks. Then I think I'll take it from Fatima, because you are one of the co-stars of Baraka Meets Baraka, which is really the biggest in contemporary times, the biggest Saudi feature before the cinemas opened. So it played internationally at festivals, and I know it played in the UAE a few times. But now your films, including your the one, I don't know, you're on so many films that are playing that have played theatrically there. How is the feeling for you as an actor and a director and a producer to have these cinemas at home now compared to what it was like when Baraka Meets Baraka came out?
Wow. First of all, thank you for hosting this and for the initiative. I'm very honored. Regarding this question, I feel like it's always euphoric thinking of the transition. I feel very old, even though it's only been maybe 8-9 years since the release of Baraka Meets Baraka, but what we've been experiencing on daily basis in Saudi Arabia is transformative. The pace and the speed of change is so grand that 1 year feels like a decade. On a personal level, I speak, but also recognizing the shift between one release and another is really great in production quality, in script, in narrative. I don't believe in competition now and today. I feel like every film is a case study of its own, because there's no one identical scenario to the other. So we experience releases after, one after the other, and I can't say that this is in comparison to this better or worse. There is no such thing. Each one is a case study of its own, proving to its creators and to the colleagues in the industry how one could produce in a local field with a global standard. And slowly we're taking the steering wheel with regards to how we would like our visuals to look like, how we would like our films to feel like. Because, again, I repeat this, since the days of Barakah, we've always said we've grown up watching cinema. Cinema for us is not foreign. We are accustomed to watching films. This is not something new for Saudis. The new thing is that we are making it on the big silver screen nowadays. And that's the shift. Even prior to cinema, like, we had a lot of YouTube productions that could be considered, short films, to say the least. So in terms of like the know-how, there has been a lot of film sets, but not for the big screen. And this has been the shift that we've taken since 2018, and since the release of maybe the first Saudi film in Vox at the time, with Roland as the first Saudi film to be released in Saudi Arabia. But prior to that, with Barakah, one of the constant narratives or discussions we used to have at the time in 2016 was how much it would have been different to bring this film home, and how surreal it was that the audience of this film, be it Saudi audience or foreign audiences, had to travel in order to watch the film abroad. And even more surreal that they had to, sometimes buy flight tickets so they can watch a film on Saudi Airlines or on Lufthansa or British Airways. And it was really funny that, you would want to do that much in order to watch a film produced and made locally. Of course, nowadays it's very different. It's kind of like the opposite. We see the world coming and being invited and welcomed to the land in Saudi Arabia to film its own productions. And it's groundbreaking. It's just transformative.
It really is. And I want to come back to the other countries producing films there, and also more specifically about the films, but I want to get everyone in to speak a little bit first. Aymen, you are in the position of actually having a film and playing in theaters right at this moment, called El Señor. It's a broad comedy that is really delightful. I watched it last night, and I would like you to also, you also remember no cinemas, and now as a filmmaker you get to have your first big feature in a theater in your home country. How is this change for you? You haven't had the same experience as Fatima, who started abroad. So how was
Right. First, thank you, Alia. Thank you for the initiative. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. What to talk about? Honestly, like, we have so much been going since 2018. They used to know, like, Egyptian films or maybe Egyptian cinema used to lead, and then when UAE opened up the film industry, also we got a lot of box office sales. But now, if you look at the numbers, like someone mentioned earlier, today the Saudi box office is just killing it. It's amazing. It's boosting the economy of so many different industries, not only the Saudi industry, and that brings a big challenge for us as locals. Now, how can we compete with others? Like, it's not the competition between us. It's how can we compete against Egyptian films, against Bollywood films, against Hollywood films. And that today the entertainment is just it comes from everywhere. The opening of cinema since 2018 gives us a lot of opportunities. There's so many production companies today. Nowadays, local production companies are opening. There's so many studios are opening up. There's so many opportunities for fund and for investing in films and producing Saudi content. And I think the challenge for us today is how can we take all this fund and find the right stories that we can make films that actually bring money and of course tell good stories. But my goal is how can we, with of course other filmmakers, how can we sustain this fund for the longest, as much as we can? How can we produce films that actually brings money and make the investors see the value in the industry and in the sector, you know? And again, I think the big challenge we have today is how can we compete with the biggest players like Hollywood films. Another thing that I think is like today, what is the identity of a Saudi film? You know, what like when you watch an Egyptian film, you know what you're gonna go watch. You're gonna go watch a comedy. You're gonna laugh. If you're gonna, mashallah, in the US, you guys have so many different genres, like horror, comedy, action, and you guys mastered all of them. But when it comes to Saudi cinema, we still did not master a genre yet. We're still learning about different genres. We're still, like Fatima said, I think we need to like encourage each other, filmmakers, and see how can we make films that actually good films that travel and people can watch it and enjoy watching these films. So yeah, and like you mentioned, if you didn't watch El Señor and if you're in Saudi, you have to go watch it. It's we're very happy with the admissions. We're almost 50,000 admissions for the size of the film, competing with films like Deadpool and like Aliens and other big blockbuster Egyptian films. So we had a good piece of the cake, and we're happy with it, and we look forward to produce more films. So that's from my part.
Okay, let me come back to some of that later. Musab, I know you've studied the longer trajectory of Saudi cinema, and you know, we have all, there was a lot of talk about the UAE for some time and about Qatar for a while, but now everyone's only talking about Saudi Arabia. And what there, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about genres as well, is why is Saudi Arabia able to march forward, whereas the others have sort of stepped aside in terms of producing what we call a national cinema or trying to figure out a national cinema? Is it just because Saudi Arabia has a bigger population and more funding, or can you go into what you think might be the reason we're seeing so much support from the government and the private sector around Saudi cinema that we didn't see in the other Gulf countries when they started this, and we don't see even in Egypt now because of the financial issues? So
Okay.
that's your question.
I believe that the filmmakers, they have a big support from government, but they don't have a full support from the audience. So, but when you compare to other companies, they have also in other countries, you could see a big fans. So the occasion, it's not equal. So you cannot because the market is still not mature. So when we open when you reopen the cinema in 2018 up to now, it's only 6 years. So we can't judge the movies. And the other thing, the government entities, everybody has a target. So for example, Ministry of Culture, they cares more about developing the industry as a culture. When you look to the General Authority of Entertainment, they are interested in movies as an entertainment product. So each government entity has target have to achieve it. So I believe the support, we have it, but each filmmakers has to do something related to the entity. So for example, if you have a commercial movie and you go to Bow, you might not get the support. So the support depends on if you help them to achieve the target. And the other thing is, I believe the society is still not believing in the Saudi movies. I think this is the big issue. So when you compare the top 10 movies in the box office, you barely watch a Saudi movie. So Senior, I believe it was one of the best Saudi films. It was only for 1 week in the top 10. This is, for me, I think it's a concern. When you see, let's say, Sattar or Mandub al-Layl, they did very well, but when you compare it to other movies, like, for example, the movies were released in the past few months, they didn't do very well. Why? Because they don't have main actors or well-known actors like YouTubers or something else. So this is a really concern. The last point, I think, the good part for me when I observe the industry, people are proud to be working on the industry. So I'm working in a government project leading the film sector. When we announced the initiative, we received 30,005 Saudi short films from students in the country. We were surprised. And then when we hold the event and we gathered the best 500 movies, we were surprised that every student came with his father or with his mother with a full support. So I think this is a very good changing in the society. We start to accept that our sons or our boys to working in the industry. But when you see the movies on the screening, you will not have the support. So we're still having some challenges, and I think we just need time. So 5 years from now, then I would believe everything will be changed. The good news for us, our box office on the top of the MENA since 2022. When we compare each year, we have more movies. So now, up to now, we have around 70 feature films between box office and between Netflix. When you compare it between 2005 to 15, we only had 3 feature films. So I believe we just need time. All the government support will have some adjustment, and then we just need time for to have the industry to be more mature.
So I'm going to follow up on that one, because I think you said that the audience doesn't have faith in the movies yet. Is it, and I'd like everyone to address this, is it because they're not comfortable with these issues being discussed in film, that some of the issues that are discussed, are they not comfortable with the portrayal of Saudi Arabia that might not be their portrayal of Saudi Arabia? Or is it that they don't think the films are at the technical level of Hollywood or Bollywood? I don't know, like, I'm going to let Fatima address that one first, and then come back to the others.
This question hits a nerve, hits close to home. My God, there are so many arguments. I feel like this is this is a conversation opener by all means, because at the beginning, I felt that the trust was not in the quality. So on a technical level, the audience was still testing out the capabilities of the creators on a script level, on a production level. Sometimes also the colleagues in the industry, the creatives themselves would keep an eye out, especially knowing the budget behind each film, whether this budget is articulated visually. So like whether I can see the money or not was something that we kept kind of like, I can see this. No, oh my God, they didn't know how to spend their money. The budget went out of place. The producer was not capable. There are some conversations of that on that level that surfaced. However, I feel like in the past year or two, there has been a very, very great shift in production quality. And I don't think there is a technical deficiency per se, maybe more so on a script level, on a writing level. We're still working our ways. And I think the audience feels it and knows it. And, on a writing level, everything is in bare sight, because in writing, you're basing the backbone for actors, for the director, for even if you have a great production quality, like a great designer and a great wardrobe and everything is amazing, whatever you instill in that script manifests. And so there could be some cringe, there could be some comedy that's unattained, there could be some like lower levels in performance, and it all comes from this scenario, right? Sometimes you wish too much to have a tone that in editing you fall in. And so between the script and the editing, which for me, editing is rewriting. So again, we go into writing, is a lot that we can do. So sometimes I feel like, you know, it's still a technical conversation, but because I'm tapping on the script, I feel like it's also about how we package our stories for our local audience. So when I say that everything is in bare sight, your audience knows how difficult the subject matter is. So they're going to be like standing there with eyes wide open, wanting to see how you're going to portray this character or how you're going to portray the subject matter and how you're going to unfold it on your table. And to a big extent, the audience is not comfortable seeing themselves. It's way less personal. When I watch something unfolding in a place or a planet or a world that is not very close to mine, you know, I can laugh about it. I can cry over it. I can, you know, relate. I can criticize. But when it's similar to me, when it's similar to my mom, when it's similar to my dad, when it's similar to my world, to my friends, to my street, it's personal. Even if it's comedy, even if it's horror, it's personal. And everyone's like, oh, this is not how it is. No, this is not how we do it. This is not how I talk. This is not how he talks. It's like there is this relatability, which we adore. We want relatability in our scenarios, but it's too personal to the extent that everyone wants to criticize it, and everyone's guard is suddenly built so thick that it's like as if I'm knocking on your door and I'm like, listen, it's not about you. Like, it's not about you. It's just a story. And I remember this unfolding since the days of Baraka. And I remember standing on stage with the director and with my co-star, talking to the audience about how this is an 88-minute long film. And no, it does not represent 30 million people. And no, it will never wish to represent 30 million people. No film wants that. Films are not there to portray, not even documentaries are there to portray 30 million people. So let alone a fiction, you know, or a comedy or a horror or a drama. Like, these films only portray their stories and their characters. But of course, with regards to your question, I feel like the scenario started with technical, but then now it's becoming a little bit too personal. So packaging your technical expertise is so important. And when it's open and bare sight, people are going to be more harsh and are going to be more critical on how you represent them. Yeah. So how you're representing them, your audience, your local audience, comes in the picture stronger than ever. That's like my 2 cents.
No, I think it's great. I've seen a similar thing happen in the UAE as well, where that I think was part of the big struggle with filmmaking. There was this, first of all, number one, what you said about the scripts and being fundamental to everything that would come after, but also this, nobody can it's when we use the word Saudi cinema, then we're putting on this national thing that one film has to represent these 30 million people. So I think that's a really good point. And I'm going to stay with filmmakers before we go back to our scholars on this. Aymen, do you feel this pressure with your film, which pokes a lot of fun at the expat situation in Saudi Arabia? But do you feel that also?
Okay. So let's ask the question, do we actually have this issue? Do Saudis actually don't watch Saudi films? Yes or no? And if you look at statistics, I think there have been around almost 38, 39 Saudi films been released theatrically in the past 3-4 years, okay? Only 50 people, only 9 films that crossed 50,000 admission. So out of 39, so the average Saudi film box office, it shows it's around 200 to 300,000 admission per film. Like, let's say if it's an American film or it's an Egyptian film. So now, as a Saudi film, when you produce and you release it in cinemas, there's only 9 films that cross the 50,000. 2 of them, I think, is around 70, 60, and I think 5 of them were around the range of 150 to 100,000. And then we had a one unicorn that reached a 900,000, which was Sattar. So yes, we have this this challenge. And me personally, myself, I actually went to cinemas and I watched the film. It's really cool to watch the film with the real audience in cinemas, and they don't know that you're the director. Funny thing that one guy after the movie, they were all laughing. So I told him I was Zorkov, the Russian guy. And he's like, get away. I'm like, you're not that guy. And then he just left. He didn't believe me. So it was nice. So I met so many people that saw the poster from outside, because a lot of Saudis buy tickets when they are at the gate. I mean, at the box office. And I asked him, what are you going to watch? He's like, oh, I'm going to watch X Marati, another Egyptian film. I said, no, why? Watch Senor. It's better film, trust me. And he's like, what is it about? I was like, oh, I don't know. It's a Saudi film? Nah, I'm not going to watch. I told him, come on, man, support Saudi. I promise maybe tomorrow I'll go. But he's like, why are you saying this? I told him, I know the director. So, you know, so we have this issue. And I think it's like, and I had these discussions all the time with fellow producers, even studio heads. Why? What's the challenge? How can we? And I think it's a multiple hat. Like it's part of it, as Fatima said, is the script. Other parts is I think marketing. I think we don't have a specific marketing company for Saudi for films. We don't have any marketing Saudi company that focus on launching films and pre-launching films and how to promote films. And today, all filmmakers are marketing themselves, and it's a big challenge. Like you're disappointed by what's happening from distributors in the region in generals. So that's one issue too. So we need to rebrand like the Saudi films. Like, what is a Saudi film? And I think the part of it, as I said before, Saudis don't know what to expect. Am I gonna laugh? Am I gonna cry? Am I gonna usually? And then one studio head actually told me, like, do you know who produced Bad Boys? Do you know the director of Bad Boys? It just broke the box office record, 1.7. No one cares about the behind the scenes guys. No one cares about the filmmakers who made the film. They only cared about Will Smith, and they went to watch it. So, and I think that brings us to another point, which is the star power. We don't have a star power yet, and I think that all comes with time. So, as Barda Fatma mentioned earlier, I think we're in a case by case study stage. I mean, we're learning. And we have to be humble enough to learn from each other and understand the market and get closer to the locals and try to. And it's a big challenge, by the way, because it's not only Riyadh and Jeddah and Dammam. Like I learned that there are cinemas in Al-Qasim, cinemas in Arar, cinemas in Tabuk. And there are small cities and big cities in different parts of Saudi Arabia. And I think, how can we get them to watch Saudi films? You know, they will go and watch Hollywood films, but a Saudi film, I think it would be a big challenge. But we are there. We're not giving up. We're Saudi filmmakers, and we're gonna keep producing. So we're gonna make it happen one day, and we're gonna make films. Saudi films travel abroad to the MENA regions, 400 million population. So, and then maybe somehow we reach the world.
Well, on that note, Abdulrahman, you teach younger people, you teach students.
Absolutely, yes.
Do they, and when we talk about star power, I also want to go backwards a little bit in time. I mean, there was Telfaz 11, there were, if we consider all of that film, those are still Fatima herself. These are people that predate the cinema that are very recognizable within the region, not just in Saudi Arabia, as icons of performative film, but even if it's in another format. So maybe how do those that group sit with students today, and how do they react to films that are happening now when you teach them?
It's actually, yeah, it's absolutely what Fatima mentioned, and Aymen is so much, it's very, very true. When it comes to audience, I do teach students, female and male, and they lack actually awareness about Saudi film, like what Aymen said. They actually, even if they've seen the promotion and marketing through Netflix and cinemas, even through X or Instagram, they don't have the tendency to go. So, and I think there's, with this all potential and positive vibes for Saudi film development and also culture, I think there must be a sustainable, somehow we have to be, to develop what we call the sustainable part of the Saudi film culture. And to think about sustainability, we have to think about education. And that's in addition to what Fatima says, script, and to Aymen said, marketing. We actually do also need to develop the whole system of education, not through university, not through a public or non-profit organization, but through what we call the public schools. It has to be somehow, and there's a lot of things going on with the Ministry of Culture. Musab maybe is aware of that, that there's lots of initiatives going on to include film and music as well as other arts into curriculum, and how we kind of teach students, for example, how they critique and analyze and watch films. And audience, our kids' generation are coming in like 5 or 10 years after, and they will have to see, they will support your films, and they will become the main fans for everyone film in Saudi. So there's high stake to support what we call that newcomers, the generation of public school generation, to kind of learn and like teach them how to consume films as well as how to watch films and how to critique it in a way different than what they have seen through Netflix or other platforms. There's also so much going on when it comes to festivals. There's a lot of workshops going on, and there's audience comes and interact with filmmakers and actors and actresses. And so they feel the vibes of development, that it's not only for the industry insiders, but for the whole Saudis, citizens and non-citizens who like benefit from that development, the culture scene, reflecting our what we call it, our ourselves on big screen. So there's lots of things, but what I think with education, public schools as well as university, myself, I do teach at 2 universities in Saudis, and I've seen that there's need to be so much development when it comes to curriculum, so much development when it comes to how we link industry with the curriculum. And you know, Alia, how hard is it to teach, and also how hard it to actually to convince people to watch films or read about films, even academia or just general films. So reading and watching is the key, actually, to me. It's the key how we can get people to know more about local films and Saudi films, and in somehow they kind of accept themselves on the bigger screens. Their story has to be reflected on that medium.
And then is there a bit of a gap with cinema in general because they have the shorter attention span of the YouTube videos and the social media?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yeah. One of my classes last semester, I've asked them about one of films produced by Telfaz, I think. It was hit at cinemas, and I was kind of shocked, but students not attended and not even care about it. So, and we were actually talking about films and filmmaking course. So that kind of, I'm not sure it's called tendency or still lack of knowledge about, it could be marketing, what Aymen said, it could be something else. But I think a generation are growing, and what I believe it's that public school, especially elementary school, and having all these materials at hand for our like 10 years or 11 years students can maybe make difference in the coming 10 years.
Interesting. Okay. Let's go back to the past. What, did somebody want to jump in?
Can I say something to the point of public school? Because when I was in LA back in the time, like 7 years ago, I was actually brought to teach film in LA to elementary schools. Like, yes, definitely we need this. That's something that I just wanted to draw.
Okay. Musab, I'm going to switch the conversation a little bit now to the ones who are funding these films. And I know you've worked a bit looking at Rotana in the past, and now we have NBC. So getting into the movie game. And what do these other companies, they're not government funding, they're semi-government in some cases, what role are they playing in the past and the present now with filmmaking?
Okay, before I answer it, I just would like to mention what Abdulrahman said about students. It's really disappointing for me. I teach in the two major cities in Riyadh, which is Princeton University and Imam Mohammed bin Saud Islamic University. When I ask students, they are enrolled in filmmaking program. When I ask them about a Saudi movie screening right now in box office, nobody watch it. But when I ask them about an American movie, the majority of the class, they will raise their hand. So when I ask them about the senior, just a couple of them. When I ask them about Fatima last week, just one or two of them, they raise their hand, males and females. So it's really disappointing. Relating to companies, before 2016, when you look to the big player in the industry, today they are different. So when you look back then, you would see Rotana leading the industry. They produced Wajda, Mnahi, and I believe in 2005 there was a plan announced by Prince Rashid bin Talal to produce more than 10 feature films each year and to open cinemas, and even it was covered by international journals like Washington Post, New York Times, but nothing of it happened. Only 2 feature films was produced by Rotana. They couldn't open cinemas as they promised. We had some obstacle in the past with the extremists. So today we have a different players. So and unfortunately, I think Rotana should be one of them, but it's not playing its role. With the vision right now, the good part of it, we see each year a new company. And the good thing, I believe, it's we see more specializing companies. So for example, before 2016, when you watch a Saudi feature film, it's produced 100% by one company. But right now, when you see it, the equipment from a company, the art direction from a company, the talent from another company. So you could see it like as an industry, like 10 to 15 company involved in producing this movie. So this is a very good sign for me that to feel, well, we have now an industry, so you can open just, let's say, rental company or a studio company. The other thing is that the Ministry of Culture and other government entities, they change their mentality from supporting individuals to produce films to support companies. So if you go to them as a film director, like for example, now we have 2 well-known filmmakers, Aymen and Fatima. If they go as a person, they might not get fund, but if they go in a company name, for sure they will get a fund, because they want the government, they believe they want to build a system and they want to have a sustainability. If you look to the report, it was published yesterday by Ministry of Culture. They publish a report annually about the status of the cultural sectors in Saudi Arabia. The theme this year is about sustainability. So they want the industry to be sustained, and one of their options or their things they believe is that we need to have more companies, not more production companies, more specializing companies, in order to have a bigger industry.
So, and I guess that's another question for all of you. To think about is there's a big effort by the Film Commission to bring outsiders to film in Saudi Arabia, so that you're also having an industry where people come to film there, especially in Al-Ula. So, does that mean that Saudi Arabia can be a self-sustaining production center, or I don't think it is yet, where if I needed to go make a movie in Saudi Arabia now, I could get I could get a cinematographer that's at the level I need, and sound and everything I could get in Saudi Arabia without having to bring them from outside. Are we there yet, or is that something that our people are working
I
for?
think if you read the Film Commission vision, it's clear. Their vision, they would like to be the movie hub in the Middle East for the international productions. So, for example, if a major studio in Hollywood wants to produce something in Middle East, we aim to be option number one for them. So this is the Film Commission goal. It's clear. The Ministry of Culture, it has another program which is help Film Commission to achieve this goal by giving a cash rebate for up to 40%, which is, I think it's a very unique. But however, it's not an easy program. So it was announced 2 times. It was announced, I believe, in 2018 and 2022. We just know that just like a couple of companies, they got the rebate. So this is still not clear if this is going to be happened or not. But for sure, from now up to from now to 2030, Film Commission has to achieve this goal to be the hub center in the Middle East for the international productions.
Okay, I think I am going to ask Abdulrahman to respond to how feasible that sounds, and then I'm going to come back to the 2 filmmakers about the films themselves, because I know that I know you've looked at the situation in Dubai when they were trying to do this as well, and the rebates. I believe you did some work on the modes of production and the idea that, you know, you have to keep a cinematographer in your country, you have to have enough work for them to stay a whole year, all the time. So I don't know if you wanted to jump in and address that, Abdulrahman.
Yes, absolutely. It's always crucial, as I mentioned before, when you have a plan, but there's no sustainability, or there's no plan that's based on sustainable development. And we do have some challenges when it comes to infrastructure building. We have lots of hopes and plans to develop studios in Riyadh, and we do have a new Huda, and we have so much also going on in the East and Jeddah as well. But we need to think of sustainability. For me, I've done research about how local film production, from the perspective of sustainability, how is it more like sustain itself, or it still depends on like others? We do have a lot of funds now, almost over 8 funds available for local filmmakers, even international. But we need to really channel these funds to specific objectives and agendas that's for the Saudi film industry to grow and to be mature. We do have a lot of, as I mentioned, NEOM and Riyadh have announced their visions, and lots of international projects brought with them, and know-how and also skills, and as well as fund investment even in infrastructure, and all these. It's very much important, but we also need to think, as I mentioned before, how we link these to become more sustainable, and through education. And what I see is that education is kind of detached from what's happening at the industries. We do have lots of studios, a lot of infrastructure, and lots of development, lots of funds, but the education system itself, it's a bit, and the training itself, and training the talent, the new generation, it's a bit kind of there's lots of challenges and obstacles there. And I think when we link that, whether through film schools, whether through university programs, whether through public schools, academia, or whatever we call it, even nonprofit workshops, then we could maybe talk more about sustainability, and also talk about how even investments from abroad and international projects happening in any cities in the countries can contribute to them, as it's contributed to the GDP, as contribute to the film industry itself development. And also we learn as we go. We learn from the talent, we learn from the experience itself, and we learn from watching ourselves and our land at the big screen.
And it's interesting because that word sustainability comes up associated with Saudi Arabia on so many different things. So think about it in terms of film as well. Fatima, I'm going to ask you if Aymen, I'll ask you similarly. What about content? Are there red lines you don't want to cross? Are there, because I feel that the films have been compared to the other regions of the Gulf, and have been fairly open about approaching social issues. And do you feel that that's something that do you feel like you have red lines, or are there things you really would wish you had more freedom with, or are you taking the Iranian approach of dealing with things in a kind of subtle way, framed within other stories? I know, Fatima, almost all your films deal with very important social, cultural issues and family issues. So do you want to address that?
Of course. I remember, just before talking about film, let's talk about what is it that we think censored topics are, or untapped on topics, or unresolved, or things to keep away from, or things to delve into. And I recall this incident where I was performing. I have a project called The Other Story, and I collect real life stories from the streets in Saudi Arabia. And this had turned into a book, actually, which I've written half of, and the other half are the actual stories. And I remember when I took the book before it was a book, so when I took the stories to perform a couple of them in a European country, there was this depiction that my performance would be about women driving and, these kind of issues. This was back in 2018, actually. And I was like, no, but actually my story collection, which is comprised of almost 5,000 stories, only maybe has 2 stories about women driving. And this is a stereotype about what women want to talk about, what men want to talk about, what society wants to talk about. And, I recall this because immediately I was speaking to the curator, who had this assumption. And I was like, but why are you assuming that my performance would be about this topic? And she was like, because there's stories from Saudi. And I was like, but Saudi is vast and grand, with layers of stories and topics that concern us on daily basis. And if I ask someone off the top of their head to write their story at the moment, without editing, without filtering, without censoring, it wouldn't be about their inability to drive. It would be about, I don't know, economic struggles, their divorce, their travels, their scholarship, their, concerns that they're dealing with. And I bring this now because it's very important to know what Saudis want to talk about, what their films are going to narrate. When we talk about changing narratives, how are we changing narratives? What narrative do we want to even talk about? And, I've worked on a spectrum of topics in my films, whether I was a director or an actor or a writer. And from I remember people talking about Baraka Meets Baraka being a very courageous film. And I was like, what's courageous about it? It's just about a fashionista wanting to, you know, document yourself. Today, we have so many fashionistas, like the blogging industry is booming. And so what is it that is that we're stepping away from, or we're taking steps towards, is relative, in my opinion. And when I talk about film writing, I talk about anything and everything. It really depends on how I'm bringing it to the table. So if I take one story and I repackage it, I can make it seem offensive. And I take that one same story, but I package it in a different direction, and I'll make it homey, heartwarming, inviting, welcoming for discussions. So it really is about how you package your stories. And that's why sometimes I talk about changing narratives, not about the topics that we're discussing. It's about the packaging of the narrative. What discourse am I taking to address that same topic? From one film to the other, I can be talking about the same theme, but in one film, everyone's welcoming, everyone's talking about it. TikTok is booming, X is welcoming, the critics are excited, the rates are high, and the tickets are being sold. And in another one, there is a backlash because the same topic was misaddressed. Now, I'm not for backlash. I'm not for harsh criticism for the sake of harsh criticism, especially today, especially nowadays, because we need to understand that even, you know, the harshest theme or the harshest story comes with good intentions. Filmmakers and creators want people to watch their films. No one wants to make a film and gets only 2 people to watch it. That's why are you creating? Why are you spending millions on your film? And that's the case. Why are you sweating and, you know, getting angry and getting frustrated if that's the result? So for me, this whole censorship topic is really about getting equipped with what we have in our heads and what will result on the screen. Because in between this and that is in Arabic we call it telephone kharban, you know, the telephone that goes, you know, the game that we play as children.
Yeah.
And it's from the moment you write it as an idea on a blank slate on your paper to the moment it is edited and brought to the screen, there is a telephone, a broken line between that could reiterate and repackage that one line you said or that one representation you intended to bring in good light. So in a nutshell, I feel like from all the stories that I had tried to depict on the screen, the smart ones were the ones that received the highest welcome from the audience, were the ones packaged well, you know, regardless of the theme. Yeah.
That makes, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I do think that was part of Bereka Meets Bereka's appeal. It was a very well packaged.
I can just give you a couple of examples, like, you know, in my role in Al-Hamur, it was so gutsy, so daring. People adored it. People were championing me in airports and streets and shopping malls. And to me, I was scared because I knew this role was very gutsy and very, you know, early 2000s, Saudi Arabia, Jeddah particularly, women were all about, you know, their contour and their lip liners and whatever. And I was scared, but people were so excited for this role. And I think it was about the packaging. Similar to different scenarios in different films like Route 10, when I played a very innocent road trip thriller with a sister and a brother. And this film was attacked for one thing, that it looked Western, that it didn't look Saudi enough, that it didn't seem Saudi enough. And so look, the thriller had nothing to do with anything courageous or gutsy or whatever. It's a road trip between brother and sister who take a trip from Riyadh to Abu Dhabi. Has nothing, you know, just a thriller. But it was less welcomed. It got good views, but like less welcomed than another gutsy film just because of the packaging and the way it was brought up on the screen. People want to see themselves and they want the story to look like them, but in a good package.
Let me,
Yeah.
I actually think your performance in Al-Hamur is really fantastic. It like it just wakes up the movie. And I think it's on Netflix if anyone would like to see it.
Anderson is on Netflix as well.
Oh yes, and Basma is on Netflix also. And there is a question in the Q&A about Basma. We'll come to that in a minute. Aymen, how would you like to address this question?
I mean, I believe every filmmaker, if you're a filmmaker, you have a voice and you want to tell a story, and you're part of where you grow up and where you come from. So I encourage people to actually be themselves, and every writer I work with, every director or every producer I meet, or even actor, why do you want to make this film? What's your purpose? My purpose is I'm making this film because there is a good lie and there's a bad lie, and I believe in the good lie. Like for example, that we did in the city, or maybe the white savior syndrome. Like also we touched base on that, and that's why it's a real struggle. So I've never had any issue with censorship, honestly. I think if you understand where you come from, you understand the cultures, you understand the values. We're very proud of it. We part of my mission is actually to, like, in making films, is I want to bridge cultures. Like if you look at my previous films, the first movie I made back in 2016, it was about a Saudi playing soccer in the US, and we shot it in LA. So, and then the other one, Rupture, that one we won the best Saudi film in the Red Sea Film Festival, also was about a Saudi British story. And this one, El Señor, it has a theme of a Saudi Italian. I'm working on another ones that are actually also Saudi Italian, Saudi Europeans. So yeah, and I'll just put our voice in those films. And I never had a call from someone like, hey, why do you have this? Cut it down. Or no, that just never happened, And yeah, I mean, like we should just be proud of what we do, and understand the themes that we want to tell without offending anyone. We just want to tell stories that close to the hearts and related to our people, and also hopefully can relate to wider audience. And that's the challenge for Saudi films.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think you're on similar patterns there. I'm just want to make sure I don't ignore anything in the Q&A. So I'm just looking. Oh, you have a nice one here I'm so proud to be one of Dr. Abdulrahman's students. He is so inspiring. So it's a lovely thing to always hear when you teach. And there's a question here about infrastructure, but I think we covered it already, except to add foreign companies for post-production, and I think we've already addressed it, this idea that there's still not enough for beginning to end film production at the highest level in Saudi Arabia, where you'd have all the entire team you would need.
But
Aymen, you want to jump in?
yeah, I wanted to say define high level to me, because I struggle understanding high level. So yeah, I mean, I think today in Saudi you can make a very good film, high quality films, from writing a script to delivering, and there are so many good films. Trust me, like if you watch, there's Noura is playing in Cannes, you have Hajjan, you have so many good films. And technical, I think Saudis are very talented, honestly. And today in El Señor, I had about 60% of the crew that worked on the film, they're Saudis. Maybe some of the key positions they flew from abroad, but Saudis were willing to learn. Even in the next films, I'm willing to hire more Saudis. So I think today it's just a matter of I don't think that the market is ready for 15 million. So do I need to spend $15 million to make a high quality film? I don't think so. I mean, Whiplash was made for only $3 million. Get Out was only made, I think, for $4 million. So you can make high quality films with low budgets. I mean, $1 million is enough to produce a very high quality film. So it depends how, I mean, if this is a word it teases me sometimes, like high quality films. So what does that mean? Is it script? Is it performance? Is it technical? I think whoever asked that question, I would love for him to define, so yeah.
Okay, I think, yeah, and I think that's a really important point, that there's a difference between high quality and technical things like you would need to make.
Because I would like to add another point, sorry, to this, because if you spend like 10 million or $5 million in a Saudi film size, is not enough to recoup. So how are you going to make it sustainable then? You cannot, if you spend, like, for example, $1 million, you need about 400,000 admission to break even in the box office. So if you spend a $1 million, you need about 400,000 admission. So if I spend 3 million, I need almost 1.4 million admission, which is the number that Top Gun got. Tom Cruise, the most famous guy on earth. You know what I mean? So I don't think we need to spend that much money, especially because we're only 30 million population, 32, 33. And so we're not like the US, we're like the 400 million population. So and usually only 2%, 1.5, 2% of the population that goes to cinemas. So a 1% from 400 million, it's a big number compared to Saudi. So yeah, as international studio, I get it. You want to promote your film globally, but for a local film, I think we have to be cautious with this, especially if we want to build a sustainable industry.
I think there's another question here that's somewhat related to that. Well, I think it's basically, I'm trying to sum up the question. When discussing the history of Saudi cinema, what are the key moments that have shaped and influenced its development? I think we've kind of addressed that, but if everybody wanted to go around and say if there's one film that they think really changed things, or one initiative that really changed things, anybody want to jump in on that?
For me, I believe.
Okay,
go, Musab, go.
I believe when the 2030 vision was announced in April 2016, it was a very major event. I remember when I started my PhD, I hold the 2030 vision paper, and I was discussing with my supervisors, and they doubted. They said, well, no, well, so it was all negative, that it will not happen, like particularly we're talking about cinema. When you read the first draft of the vision, it was half sentence mentioning about developing and supporting the cinema. This half sentence built or created many government entities. We saw Al-Ula Film, we saw Saudi Film Commission, we saw Ministry of Culture, many government entities. So I think it's a major decision that shaped the industry, and we cannot ignore it, whether we like or dislike the initiative. The other part, I believe, is that transferring all the film aspect from the GCAM to Saudi Film Authority, I think it's a very strategic move, because GCAM was only looking for film as a classification and censorship, but they're not regulating the market. They're not developing the market. When you look to their the GCAM regulation itself, they are responsible of producing and to be part of research, studies, developing the infrastructure, building the studios. They had a lot of responsibilities. But when you look what they did, they only focus on two things: classification, censorship. That's it. So I think the transferring, it took too long. I think it was ended the last time. It was ended a couple of months ago. So now transferring everything to the Saudi Film Commission, it will allow them to start invest in the industry, because the Saudi Film Commission, they cannot invest or support something related to infrastructures, and they don't have the authority. So they need to have the authority, and I think they just did finally. So I think these two events, it's a major and help.
Okay.
If
Aymen,
I may add, maybe, you know, we forget how multifaceted the film industry is. Not only deep down, but like, you know, faceted as in like also across the departments and across the specializations. And more so, like, just to echo what Mr. Musab and Dr. Musab and Dr. Abdulrahman have mentioned about education and about academia, because when we talk about the film industry, we're talking about translators that are responsible of subtitling. We're talking about marketeers. We're talking about wardrobe designs. We're talking about production designs. We're talking about managers. We're talking about every department. We're talking about education. We're talking about film sets. We're talking about post-production. And in each one of these stages of making any film, you need hundreds of people. Even in the lowest production, in the lowest budget, you need tens of them. So you're opening homes. You are, by all means, you're opening homes, you're opening jobs, and you're opening eyes to departments that maybe a student who studied translation had never discovered that they can actually, you know, work in this field. It's called cinema, but you need people that are equipped with translation. This is just one example, like a micro kind of zoomed in, focused, but it's a world that opens up for people. And this event, the 2030 vision, was really drastically shaping to everything we are living today with regards to festivals, to commissions, to people's lives, to companies opening up, because as we mentioned prior, companies are being supported. So if I'm an individual and I want to work full-time in this industry, I'm making my own company. And thus I'm getting funded for it, and thus I'm making more films. And then therefore opening more jobs. So it's really a cycle, and it's a never-ending cycle.
interesting also. Yeah. And Aymen, you wanted to jump in on that, or?
No, I'm good. Musab covered it, and Fatima, mashallah. So yeah.
Okay, then I think I'm going to ask the last question that I see in the chat, which is actually a great way to end. It's how do you see success in the film industry more broadly? Is it in the audience numbers? Is it more youth interest in filmmaking, seeing more diverse, quote unquote, Saudi narratives depicted on the screen? What to you means a successful Saudi film industry? Abdulrahman, do you want to try that one first?
Well, very much. Success again means it's not about one film's breaking box office. It's not about 1 year that we're really achieving high number of films produced. It's more about collective, how the collective community in the industries, whether it's through private and public and also non-profit, that university and the entities like public entities supporting films, and also the private, how much they invest into the film. So that collective, I think, effort, it's what creates really the sustainability aspect. And I really need to just maybe mention something that has to do with maybe data-driven. Since we mentioned audience, I think we really need to invest into data-driven and also how we really the assumption about making films. We've done so much genres in terms of production. We've done so much types of films, and we've tested that through Netflix or through streamer, through also cinemas, and we kind of have that kind of what audience prefers, like Fatima and her role and Hamur, make audience maybe attack to Fatima personally, but that's also a sign that we need really to get more and to invest into more social, what audience really wanted, and we look at social media, look at the X platform, for example. and you really get a sense of what kind of stories, whether it's local or even international, for the distributors and marketers. They have to look at this information. It's very much gold. So for the industry really to thrive and to be much at a higher state, maybe hopefully inshallah in the 5 or 10 years, we really need to be taking care about how data are shared and also how data are really taken benefit of, especially for us as researchers. We're really begging for information from filmmakers and from production companies, because that helps how we really understand the industry and how the industry is moving. I know it's really, sometimes it's complicated. There's lots of things going on and it's not easy to share this information, but sometimes sharing is caring.
Okay, Aymen, you get to address the question now.
I mean, it's such a good question. I ask myself this question every day. It's a very good question. So, I mean, it's if you only know how much it takes to make a film, you know, I think if you produce a film, it's by itself, it's a success. Honestly, if you can convince people with that idea you have, you get money for that. So you create value out of nothing. You make money out of it. And then you put it in and you hire 150, 200 people to make the film and then get it out. I think that's success. That's huge success. And really, like, I appreciate all the filmmakers who I mean, in Saudi or abroad, I mean, to make in making films. It takes a year, it takes sometimes 10 years, it takes sometimes 5 years. It's a lot of time. And I always tell my friends, if you are a filmmaker that's been in the industry more than 10 years, then you're a legend. Because I know a lot of people can quit halfway, you know. So if you can continue and you keep making, then you're a legend. You know, you're one of the legends that make films, and it's amazing. So for me, like, I mean, beside that point, I think I would die happily if I leave the industry in a better shape for the youth. I fight for this, and I want to build a good foundation that filmmakers, they're in high school today, middle school, when they grow and they want to tell stories, they find a system, an infrastructure for them where they can actually, it makes sense for them to make a movie, and it makes a career out of them. You know, it's a clear path. As if today, and I always tell like my friends who graduated as a doctor or an engineer or an architect or a therapist, when you come back from the US, it's easy. Like, you always can apply for a job and get it. But as a filmmaker, when you come back, oh, I want to direct, but oh, you cannot direct. You need to write first. Oh, you need to wear multiple hats. So you have to direct, produce, market, edit, write, just to. And I understand, like, Fatima, mashallah, she's acting, directing, and I'm sure she maybe feel the same. So yeah, sometimes you have to wear multiple hats to finish the film. So yeah, these are the success. I mean, at least this is how I view success, you know.
Okay. Nicely. Musab, your definition?
For me, the real success when the government decide to step down. Are we going to see the industry to continue developing or decline? When we see now, we're not developing each year. Each month we have a new record. When you see in box office, when you see the number of films produced, when you see even the participation of Saudi films internationally and inside the country. So when you go, for example, inside the country, the Saudi film festivals, you barely watch one Saudi feature film and 20 short. Last edition, we saw 7 or 8 Saudi feature films there. Who believe that if you say that a Saudi movie would be trend in 2 or 3 countries in Europe, in Netflix? Al-Khalad did that. Who would believe that when you say a Saudi distributor will open his office in China and start to distributing Saudi films and screening them in China? Who would believe that another country in animation that would produce a Saudi animated feature film and would be screened in Japan. So every month we have a new record. But the real success would be when the governments try to step down. Are we going to see all the numbers from quality and quantity would continue to thriving or decline?
It's a good
And to
question.
answer that, we need to wait 5 to 10 years.
Okay, it is a good question. Fatima, I'm going to give you the last word to answer this question and add in that there is a question specifically for you here saying that they didn't understand Basma and if you want to explain the film.
The entire film?
What? No. So that's why I was almost not going to answer it because I don't know how to answer it. I know you, but I'm not sure. That's literally the question. What message did you hope to convey through your films? We don't understand Basma's film.
Where the message in the film. Okay.
Yeah. So if you would like to answer that, and then also have the last word on what success in the Saudi film industry means to you.
I wouldn't want to say I have a specific message for any of my films. Yes, I do have them internally. So I do take action based on these, messages or unconscious, I don't know, trips that I have within, impacted by everything I'm surrounded with and that are driving me towards creating. But I wouldn't want to spoon feed my messages to anyone. I think sometimes I leave things for the viewer to understand, to create their own journey with the film. Whether some characters are right or wrong, or how we judge them is something that's very relative to one's perception. In Basma, I think it was a journey between father and daughter. And who in it is the savior versus who is the fighter, who is the victim versus who is in charge. And I think with that we are resolving or maybe just discussing family roles and mental illness. I chose precisely not to portray the diagnosis of what Dr. Adlia had in the film because there are mental illness in society is not written on our foreheads. Like mental illness is everywhere, but I don't carry my mental illness around and you don't carry your mental illness around. We don't carry signs with the mental illness written on them. So it's very tricky. And that's why we need to always be kind and open and avoid judgment and avoid the savior's hat. Because you can't change others, you can change yourself. You can change the way you respond to others, even if they're the closest to you. So I'm trying to avoid like spoon feeding any of that, but I'm just gonna keep it as big as possible. Maybe give it another watch. How about that?
Yeah.
Discuss it, 2 days ago we actually had like a panel with psychologists, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a writer, and myself, and a lot of the questions happened to be about Basma as well, but also about other films and how psychology plays in characters. Films like The Joker or Girl Interrupted or The Father, or even in Saudi, on a Saudi level, like Mandub al-Layl as a character. There are different films and how psychology plays a role in it is huge. So maybe try to explore that and discuss it with family. I would encourage you. On a separate note regarding your closing question, I would say we're very privileged. I would say this is the crème de la crème, as they say, because to be able to create from a place of love and to enter homes is, I mean, who enters homes, right? Like, just ask this question. Who has access to homes? Maybe just doctors. But films have an incredible access to homes. Art has an incredible access to homes. Conversations, discussions, finding yourself in another person's world or scenario is something beyond one's ability. So films have that ability. And films don't happen just like that. They happen with years of work, with hundreds of people and years of work and a lot of money. So if anything, as creators, we're very privileged, we're very honored to be working in an industry we love, to be able to tell stories that can impact, maybe not shape or reshape, not with, the role of change, but with an inspiring role of change, an impact, I don't know, like an emotion that changes. And maybe just to wrap it up with coming back to my grandparents, I love seeing them watch my films. I live next door, like not next door, like literally the room next door. And they watch my films 300 times a month. And they don't even recall that they are watching my films 300 times a month. But just listening to my voice, my very squeaky voice, to some extent becomes disturbing to me, but I just fall in love with the film over and over again from their point of view. And to be able to enter your home in a different hat through a story that you loved working on is beyond privilege. It's beyond honoring. It's just, humbling. And I think I need to always remind myself, out of frustration and anger and, humiliation, that we are doing something we love. And to succeed just means your ability to regain yourself over and over again towards what you love, and to remind everyone working with you that you are doing what you love. And that's really, really big. So just keep doing that, keep being inspired, keep asking questions, and let the harshness of the journey aside, because we need a lot more than that. And I just, for me, that's success. I don't know if the word is success, honestly, but the word is whatever it is.
A very beautiful way to end. I think it is a privilege and an honor to be in other people's homes and to have the ability to tell that story. I think it's a really beautiful way to end. I wanted to thank you all for this. It's been really interesting. You've been all so open and honest and free with your thoughts, and I really appreciate it. I thank you very much on behalf of the Institute, and it was a real pleasure speaking with you all. So good afternoon in the US and good evening in Saudi Arabia. Thank you, everyone.